Welcome to a Healthy Living video blog. This is Ruben.
You know Aram.
Guys, it's the first day after the holidays and we have a special treat for you today. We at the office and the studio of Dan Hellman. Ruben, why don't you tell us about a little bit, Dan?
Of course, Dan Hellman, not only is he an athletic trainer, he's also a licensed physical therapist, neuromuscular therapist. He's part of the C.H.E.K Institute faculty staff. He's a fantastic neuromuscular therapist, a great friend as well. We feel very welcome to be here, for him to open the doors of his place for us to work out, to interview him, and to do all sort of business that that are associated with a private practice.
Absolutely. Ruben works out of the studio a lot. Sometimes I come in. But what's most importantly today, we want to ask him a few questions about the state of physical therapy. As a licensed physical therapist, he has a very good insight into that beautiful and honorable profession. So without further ado, we're just going to ask Dan a few questions. Stay tuned.
Take care.
So Dan, can you please tell us how do you start into physical therapy field?
Well, Aram, I didn't originally start in the physical therapy field. I originally became an athletic trainer, and I did my bachelor's degree in athletic training. I spent 5 years becoming an athletic trainer. And what I found over the time is I wanted to be able to treat more than just athletes. So during my last year of athletic training school, I decided I wanted to go on and go into physical therapy school. So that's when I did my master's degree in physical therapy.
So you always were interested in rehabilitation?
Yeah, I mean that started from, I had an injury in high school as a basketball player, and a physical therapist helped me get back to playing before the end of the year. So I was always intrigued by what a physical therapist or an athletic trainer could do with the human body, and I thought that I wanted to be a part of that.
That was cool, yeah?
Yeah, it was great.
Excellent. What do you think leads you to physical therapy besides that? Anything else that...
I would think just probably the mere fact that I like to be around people, I like to help people, and I always had an interest in sports, and I think my thought is that I was going to be an athletic trainer and work just with athletes. But then I realized that if I became a physical therapist, that not only could I work with athletes, I could also work with other populations. And on top of that, being a physical therapist would help me work even at a higher level with athletes.
Absolutely.
So that's why I chose the physical therapy route.
And what happened? You went to a physical therapy school, probably was hard.
Yeah, physical therapy school, a lot of people don't probably realize this, but it's probably harder to get into than medical school. And so I went to school. Mine was a 2-year master's degree, went straight through. I think the most we ever had off was a week at a time, so it was grueling. And I went to school, and during my schooling, there was a lot of things that was happening with the insurance industry. And I'll never forget, as an athletic trainer, I did a clinical with a physical therapist, and at that time, physical therapists were seeing maybe 8 patients a day, so it was about every hour. And so I thought, hey, this is great, you got a lot of time with the patient or the client. And right during my last clinical, it's right when this thing started to change, and during my last clinical, my clinical instructor and I were seeing 40 patients a day.
Last clinical means it was end of the school?
It was end of the school, so it was my last clinical before I was going to graduate.
Okay.
So right when I was about to graduate, things changed completely in the physical therapy profession.
What exactly changed?
Well, what exactly changed was that with the advent of managed care and HMOs and PPOs and all these different letters with insurance companies, what ended up happening is the fee-for-service day was gone, meaning that if a physical therapist charged $150 for an assessment, they got $150. It basically got to the point where the insurance company said, okay, we're going to give you X amount of dollars. And so what ended up happening, I can give you an example. One of my last jobs, my assessments were billed at $75 an hour, and the insurance company reimbursed me $8.50.
Wow.
So what ended up happening with the physical therapist is that they had to start seeing more and more and more patients, just like the medical, like doctors have to do nowadays to make what they used to make. So instead of seeing 8 patients a day to make X amount of dollars, I now have to see 40 patients a day to make X amount of dollars.
How did that make you feel as a physical therapist at that time?
It made me feel like an assembly line, and it made me feel like I could not have the impact on my patient the way that I wanted to impact them, or the way that I felt that I could impact them. I had a lot of skill and a lot of knowledge, but when you have 5 to 15 minutes with somebody, I can't use my knowledge during that time because there's not enough time in the day.
Now, as a physical therapist, where do you feel the physical therapy field goes right now?
Well, it's interesting. You know, the physical therapy field right now is kind of in an uproar a little bit. I mean, you have a lot of physical therapists that I know of. They're contacting me to see how I did what I did, to go off on my own and to become more of a private pay physical therapist. So I see a lot of physical therapists leaving the profession to do what I'm doing. But you know, the physical therapy profession, I think, is going in a way that I don't like to see it going, meaning that I think the quality of care is declining because you have to see so many patients in a day. And you know, that whole adage is, you know, if you're not getting paid what you feel you're worth, I think your quality of care that you give suffers. And it's that whole energy exchange between yourself and the patient. They're coming to you for health or for rehab or whatever, and the energy exchange is payment in return. And when the insurance companies are paying you less and less and less, I just feel like that energy exchange isn't equal.
Do you feel that it's changed just because the insurance companies start changing the way that the payment works?
No, I mean, there's a lot that plays into this. I mean, you have major corporations coming out with all the different gadgetry and all the different machines, and you know, you look at the fitness industry. You can't go to a gym today and find, you know, a gym in New York, have fun trying to find a squat rack. There's just not enough room because they filled the gyms full of machines. And the physical therapy profession has suffered from that too, with the advent of the Cybex and the Biodex and all the different stims and all the different ultrasounds. And I really think the old physical therapist with the hands-on, the manual therapist, the therapist that was really good at exercise and corrective exercise, I think that has gone by the wayside for technology. Now, I don't have a problem with technology. I love technology. But when it comes to the human body, I think a lot of times getting back to the root of movement, of exercise, of nutrition, of lowering stress levels, I think that's what's being missed because of this sense that we have to see so many patients in a day.
Absolutely. Do you feel like that, like for me, the physical therapist is a very honorable profession.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like that physical therapist that really cared about the human body and really was able to fix it and help the patients, is it kind of like a dying breed right now?
You know, I don't know if it's a dying breed or not. I don't spend, with where I'm at in my profession today, I spend very little time around physical therapists now, except for when I'm taking a continuing education course. So I'm not submerged in the profession like I used to be. I can tell you I've seen differences in the looks of physical therapists as the years have progressed. I can remember, you know, in my class, most of the students in the class were extremely physically fit. And if you think of the term physical therapist, right? And I'm kind of actually a little bit appalled now when I go off to some of the continuing education courses and I see the shape of the physical therapists themselves. And to me, I've always loved that saying, you can't give what you don't have. And so I've seen a change in not only the way the physical therapists practice over the years, but I've also seen a change in actually the looks of the physical therapists and how they represent themselves, their bodies, their, you know, they're overworking themselves and on and on and on. So I think there has been a change. I don't know if it's a, you know, I do think that manual therapist, the one that's really good at working with the body, really good at corrective exercise, I think that is dying away a little bit for the new fandangled, you know, quick zap them with this machine and do this approach.
Dan, can you please tell us what kind of path you chose after becoming a physical therapist?
Well, after I graduated physical therapy school, because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, I became a traveling physical therapist. And what I did is I basically did 3-month assignments in different cities and just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And during that time, managed care was really starting to dig in, and I was, you know, again, seeing so many patients, and it wasn't what I had signed up for. You know, I really thought I was going to come out of physical therapy school and have an hour with each client or patient, whatever you want to call it. And so, you know, I went back to my first love, and my first love was the fitness profession. And so once I got established in being in the fitness world and using my physical therapy background, everything just kind of blossomed from there. And so now I just consider myself more of a coach. I am a physical therapist, and I'm also a C.H.E.K faculty member, so I found the C.H.E.K Institute, and I learned a lot of stuff postgraduate with Paul C.H.E.K. And so what I've basically done now is, in my approach, is that I'm a private coach, and I do physical therapy if I have to do physical therapy. I do corrective exercise if I have to do that. If I have to do nutrition or if I have to do stress management counseling, I do that. So I take kind of more of a holistic approach now.
So if you had a choice to add something to physical therapy profession, what would you add to it?
Oh, what would I add to it? I think number one absolute I would add to the physical therapy profession would be the mere fact that we are not just physical beings, that we're emotional, mental, and spiritual beings, and that we have to address this emotional and mental and spiritual side of the human body. That would be number one. And the second thing most important to me is I think all physical therapists need to be highly educated in the field of nutrition.
Which is generally not the case in the physical therapy.
No, we had an hour lecture during my physical therapy schooling on nutrition.
How about spirituality and other things?
Zero.
Okay, so it's a big missing block.
It's a big missing block, but I'll tell you, some people are like Gary Gray. Gary Gray starting to talk about we're not just a physical being, we're an emotional, mental, and spiritual being. So, you know, I don't want to keep poo-pooing the physical therapy profession, because there's some amazing physical therapy people out there, physical therapists, mentors of mine that I can call today on my phone if I want to. But I do think the profession has started to go down the wrong direction, and I think it's following the modern medical direction, which is, you know, get them in the door and get them out, and it's that quick turnaround time. And there's nothing about the human body that says quick. You know, it's a very complicated system. We're more complicated than the space shuttle. So it's an interesting field, and it's an interesting time, and I do think that there's a lot of good physical therapists out there that are educating themselves and that are taking the time to take continuing education and going about and doing a better job.
Excellent. There's a lot of friends of mine, and I just know a lot of people that go through physical therapy school or planning to go through physical therapy school. What would be your suggestion, looking back at what you know right now to what it was before? What would you recommend to these kids that are going through physical therapy school right now?
Well, the first thing I would recommend to them is not to let the school weld their head shut. Because, you know, you have what I call the people sitting in their ivory tower. You have the professors. And a lot of these people that teach at the physical therapy school level, they don't actually practice very much anymore. And there's a big difference between teaching and practicing and actually seeing patients. So one thing I would just keep in mind is, you know, listen, you got to play by the rules and you got to follow what the instructors say and stuff like that. But my number one responsibility is not to let the school weld their head shut, and just to realize that you are not going to start learning until you graduate. And when you get on the job and you start finding mentors and people that you can study under and take continuing education classes, that's when the real learning begins.
Interesting. How about our patients? It feels like the patients get the like short end of the stick in this thing, so they're not getting the care that they used to get. What would the people do if they need to go to physical therapists? What would be your suggestions?
Well, you know, most people use the physical therapy route. First of all, they get a referral from a physician, and then they go to physical therapists, and then they have to find out how many visits the physical therapy that the insurance is going to allow for physical therapy. So they're going to get 4, 5, 6 visits, and, you know, hopefully if the physical therapist is good, they're going to get the person out of pain, right? And that's the good thing. But then what we got to realize is that if you're going to return back to your sport or back to your job or back to your activity, that there's something that we have to go above and beyond that pre-injury status. So finding a good physical therapist to do the joint mobilizations, to do the tissue work and all of that stuff that a physical therapist is really good at is awesome. But then what we need to do is we need to find somebody like myself, somebody like you, somebody like Ruben, that is really, really good at taking somebody above and beyond their pre-injury status. So finding yourself a really good personal trainer or a coach or whatever you want to call them to give them that extra leverage of getting even healthier than they were before they got injured.
Now, there's a lot of people use insurance to get the service that they need.
Yeah.
Obviously, we are not covered by insurance.
Correct.
How do you feel about people, the patients that actually don't have any accessible, extra income to spend on other services besides just traditional physical therapy? What would you recommend to them?
Well, what I'd recommend to them is there's a lot of fitness professionals out there. I know myself, and I know you guys also. I can design an exercise program for somebody after an assessment, and it's not that I need to work with somebody one-on-one 3 times a week, 2 times a week, or whatever. I think what would be important is you find a fitness professional that is good at doing an assessment, good at designing an exercise program, and then they take you and they film that exercise program with you, give you your own personal DVD that you can take home with you, and you can do your program on your own. So personal training or coaching or fitness coaching, whatever you want to call it, doesn't need to be expensive. I don't try to rope anybody into X amount of sessions. I just try to give them the best program that they need for the amount of money that they have to spend and for the amount of time that they have to spend.
Absolutely. I think that's pretty much all I have for you. Thank you very much for this interview. I think it's created a lot of interesting information for our viewers.
Excellent. I just want to say I've been watching your guys' footage for the last month here now, and I'm honored to be on your program, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.